She thought throwing me out would end my story. She didn't know it was the beginning of her downfall. My name is Marlon, and I am 22 years old. I had been counting the days to my birthday like a child, even though I hated myself for it. Birthdays in my house were never celebrations. They were reminders. Reminders that I was still there. Still eating food. Still taking up space. But something inside me kept hoping. I told myself this year would be different. I told myself maybe my mom would look at me and finally see a son worth loving. That morning, she didn't say a word to me. No, happy birthday. No smile. Just the same cold silence that filled the apartment every day. I tried to ignore it. I went to work. I forced myself to laugh with coworkers who had no idea what waited for me at home. All day, I replayed fake conversations in my head. Her apologizing. Her hugging me. Her saying she was proud of me. After work, I spent the little money I had on a small chocolate cake. It wasn't fancy. The bakery girl even spelled my name wrong, but I didn't correct her. I didn't want to be difficult. I never wanted to be difficult. I walked home holding that cake like it was fragile, like if I dropped it, something important inside me would shatter. When I opened the door, the apartment smelled the same as always. Old oil. Cold walls. Loneliness. My mom was sitting at the table, scrolling on her phone. I stood there for a moment, waiting for her to look up. She didn't. I finally said it, quietly, like I was afraid the words might explode. It's my birthday. She looked at the cake first. Her eyes narrowed. Then she looked at me, and the way her face changed made my stomach drop. There was no warmth there. No surprise. Just irritation. I tried to smile. I said, I bought a cake. We don't have to do anything. I just thought. She cut me off. Stop, she said. Her voice was flat, tired, like I was exhausting her just by breathing. I'm not doing this. I didn't understand. My hands were shaking, but I kept holding the cake. The frosting was starting to melt onto my fingers. She stood up and said words I will never forget. You're 22. You should have been gone already. I'm done taking care of you. I laughed, because my brain couldn't accept it. I said, it's just my birthday. Why are you so angry? That's when she said it. You ruined my life. Those 4 words hit me harder than anything she had ever said before. My chest felt tight. My ears rang. I asked her what she meant, even though I was terrified of the answer. She told me I had to leave. Tonight. No arguing. No excuses. She said she wanted her life back. She said I was dragging her down. She said she should have done this years ago. I asked her where I was supposed to go. She didn't hesitate. That's not my problem. I went to my room like a stranger in my own home. I packed a small bag with shaking hands. Clothes I barely owned. A charger. Nothing else. I looked around the room, realizing no one would ever miss it. No photos on the walls. No memories worth saving. When I walked to the door, cake still in my hand, I turned around one last time. I wanted her to stop me. To say she didn't mean it. To say she loved me. She didn't. She locked the door behind me. The sound of that lock echoed through my body. That was the moment I understood something terrifying. I wasn't being punished. I was being erased. And standing there in the dark, on my birthday, holding a cake no one would ever eat, I made a decision that would change everything. That night, I decided to vanish. I walked for hours that night without knowing where I was going. The cake was still in my hands at first, then it felt stupid, so I left it on a bus stop bench like a forgotten gift. I kept my bag close to my chest, like someone might try to steal the last pieces of my life from me. Every step felt unreal, like I was watching myself from far away. The city didn't care that it was my birthday. Cars passed. People laughed. Lights blinked. The world kept moving while mine had completely stopped. I sat on a cold metal bench near the bus station just before midnight. That's when it hit me. I was homeless. Not because of drugs. Not because of crime. But because my own mother decided I was no longer worth a roof. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No messages. I waited. 10 minutes. Then 20. Nothing. My chest felt heavy, like someone had placed a stone inside it. I turned my phone off. I didn't want to see the screen light up with silence again. That night, I didn't sleep. I just watched people come and go, wondering how many of them had somewhere to return to. When the sun started to rise, I realized I had survived my first night without a home. I didn't feel proud. I felt empty. The next few days blurred together. I moved between shelters, parks, and public bathrooms. I learned where I could wash my face without being questioned. I learned how to sit without being noticed. I learned how to keep my eyes down so people wouldn't see the shame in them. What hurt the most wasn't the hunger or the cold. It was the waiting. Some part of me still believed my mom would call. That she would panic. That she would regret what she did and come looking for me. I imagined her crying, asking people if they had seen me. But reality was quieter. Days passed. Then weeks. Nothing. No calls. No messages. No police. No family. It was like I had never existed. That silence did something to me. It started eating me from the inside. I began to wonder if I really was as disposable as she made me feel. One night, I found a corner in a shelter where the Wi-Fi worked. I turned my phone back on. Notifications flooded in, but none from her. Just spam. Just noise. That's when I checked my old email, the one I hadn't opened in years. That's where I found the truth. Files I had never seen before. Medical records. Legal forms. Notes written in cold, professional language. My name was there, but it felt like it belonged to someone else. I read slowly. Then faster. Then my hands started shaking. I wasn't a miracle. I wasn't wanted. I was a mistake she never forgave. A reminder of a life she wished never happened. Every sacrifice she made, every harsh word, every moment of distance suddenly made sense. She didn't kick me out because I failed. She kicked me out because she finally could. I sat on the floor and laughed quietly so no one would hear me. Not because it was funny, but because my heart couldn't process the pain anymore. Something cracked open inside me that night. I stopped waiting. I stopped hoping. I realized something important in that moment. When someone erases you without looking back, you either disappear forever, or you rebuild yourself into someone they can never ignore again. That night, in a shelter full of strangers, I let my old self die. The child who wanted love vanished. And in that silence, something colder, stronger, and more patient took his place. I didn't wake up one morning and decide to get revenge. That's what people never understand. Revenge doesn't start with anger. It starts with emptiness. With the moment you realize nothing can hurt you the way you've already been hurt. After that night in the shelter, I stopped talking about my past. I stopped telling people where I came from. When someone asked about my family, I said I didn't have one. It was easier than explaining how someone can be alive and abandoned at the same time. I focused on survival first. I took any work I could find. Cleaning jobs. Night shifts. Work that didn't ask questions and didn't care about my story. I learned how to stay invisible. I learned how to say yes and keep my head down. Every dollar I earned felt like proof that I didn't need anyone anymore. I changed my routine. I woke up early. I trained my body until exhaustion drowned out my thoughts. Pain in my muscles was better than pain in my chest. When I couldn't sleep, I taught myself skills on borrowed computers. I learned things people never expected someone like me to know. I became useful. And being useful meant being harder to throw away. Months passed, then a year. My face changed. My voice changed. Even the way I walked changed. I wasn't the same person who left that apartment holding a melting cake. That version of me wouldn't have survived this life. I changed my name online. Not legally at first, just enough to disappear. I erased social media. Old photos. Old connections. If my past couldn't find me, it couldn't hurt me anymore. But pain doesn't vanish. It waits. One night, I heard news that made my hands freeze. Someone from my past mentioned my mom. They talked about her struggles like gossip. Money problems. Legal trouble. Stress. They said I had abandoned her. They said she was heartbroken. I didn't correct them. I listened. And something inside me shifted. She was telling a story where I was the villain. Where she was the victim. And people believed her, because she looked respectable, because she sounded convincing, because no one ever imagines a mother as the one who betrays. That's when I understood what revenge really meant for me. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to confront her. I didn't want to destroy her with rage. I wanted the truth to walk into the room and sit down quietly. I started collecting everything. Messages she had sent before kicking me out. Old emails. Documents. Records I had already found but was too broken to face. I organized them carefully, like evidence in a trial only I was running. I wrote my story. Not dramatically. Not emotionally. Just honestly. I described what happened on my birthday. The words she used. The lock on the door. The silence afterward. Writing it felt like cutting open an old wound on purpose. But every sentence gave me control. She had controlled the narrative for my entire life. Now it was my turn. I waited. I waited until my life was stable enough that her reaction wouldn't destroy me. I waited until I no longer needed her apology or her approval. Patience became my weapon. When I finally shared the truth, I didn't send it to her. I sent it to the people she cared about most. Family. Friends. The same people who believed her version without question. I didn't ask them to choose sides. I just gave them facts. And facts don't raise their voice. They just stand there, impossible to ignore. That was the moment I knew something powerful had begun. My pain was no longer eating me alive. I had turned it into something sharp. Something deliberate. Something unstoppable. I didn't see the damage immediately. That was the strange part. I expected an explosion. Anger. Screaming. Denials. But real consequences don't arrive loudly. They creep in, quietly, the same way silence destroyed me. At first, there were small signs. Someone from my family stopped replying to her messages. A friend avoided her calls. Invitations that used to come every month suddenly stopped. People who once defended her began asking careful questions she couldn't answer without tripping over her own lies. I watched from a distance. I never showed my face. I never corrected anyone publicly. I just listened. She tried to control the story like she always had. She said I was unstable. She said I ran away. She said she did everything she could. But this time, the truth was already in their hands. Screenshots. Dates. Documents. My words lined up with evidence, and her version started collapsing under its own weight. That's when she reached out to me. The first voicemail was short. My name. Her voice shaking. She said she was worried. I didn't answer. The second voicemail came late at night. She cried. She said she didn't mean it. She said she was stressed. She said she was still my mother. I sat on my bed and listened to it twice. Not once did she say she was sorry for kicking me out on my birthday. Not once did she mention the locked door. She was afraid of losing her image, not me. More messages followed. Long ones. Desperate ones. She said people were treating her differently. She said lies were being spread about her. She asked why I was doing this to her. That part almost made me laugh. Doing this to her. I remembered sitting on that cold bench, staring at my phone, waiting for a single call that never came. I remembered how easy it was for her to sleep that night, knowing I was outside with nowhere to go. And I stayed silent. Silence was my revenge, because silence was what she taught me best. Her world kept cracking. I heard she was struggling financially. Support she relied on vanished. Sympathy dried up. People stopped taking her side automatically. They started seeing her clearly, not as a victim, but as a woman capable of cruelty. And that terrified her. One afternoon, I almost replied. My finger hovered over the screen. Part of me wanted to scream everything I had held inside for years. I wanted her to feel my pain directly. But then I realized something important. She didn't deserve my voice anymore. I had already said everything that mattered. To the people who mattered. To myself. So I deleted the draft. I let her sit with the consequences she avoided for 22 years. For the first time in my life, I felt something unfamiliar. Peace. Not happiness. Not forgiveness. Peace. I wasn't chasing justice anymore. Justice was happening on its own. I was just watching it unfold, the way someone watches a storm from a safe place after surviving worse. I didn't win by becoming cruel. I won by becoming unreachable. She lost control over me. Over the narrative. Over the lie she lived in. And as her world slowly crumbled, I stood steady in mine, finally understanding something that changed me forever. The opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. And when I stopped needing her to understand my pain, I became free. That was the moment I knew the worst part of my life was behind me. And the rest, finally belonged to me. On my 23rd birthday, I woke up in a quiet room that I paid for myself. No shouting. No tension hanging in the air. Just silence, the kind that no longer scared me. For the first time in my life, my birthday didn't feel like a countdown to disappointment. I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized the person looking back at me. My eyes were harder, yes, but they were clearer too. I wasn't waiting for approval anymore. I wasn't bracing for rejection. I was standing on my own feet, and that felt powerful in a way I had never known. I went out alone that day. I didn't tell anyone it was my birthday. I didn't want forced smiles or fake wishes. I wanted this day to be real. I walked through the city that once swallowed me whole, and it felt different now. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't lost. That evening, I walked into a small bakery. I chose a cake without looking at the price. Chocolate again. Some habits stay. This time, when they asked for the name, I gave them the one I chose for myself. Not the name tied to shame. Not the name she used when she was angry. My name. When I got home, I placed the cake on the table and lit one candle. Just one. Not for age. For survival. As the flame flickered, memories tried to rush back in. The locked door. The cold night. The silence that almost destroyed me. But something was different now. Those memories didn't control me anymore. They were proof. Proof that I endured what should have broken me. My phone buzzed. A message from her. Just one sentence. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. A year ago, that message would have owned me. I would have panicked. I would have overthought every word. I would have begged for closure, for love, for something she was never capable of giving. But that night, I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. No desire to explain myself. I realized something then that felt like the final piece falling into place. Revenge wasn't ruining her life. Revenge was no longer needing her in mine. I didn't block her. I didn't reply. I simply put my phone face down and watched the candle burn lower. When it finally went out, I didn't make a wish. I didn't need to. I had already taken back what mattered. My future. She kicked me out to teach me a lesson. She thought fear would keep me small. She thought silence would erase me. Instead, it forced me to grow in ways she could never reach. I became someone she couldn't control, couldn't manipulate, couldn't rewrite. She still lives with the consequences of that night. The questions. The distance. The truth following her like a shadow. I live with scars. But scars don't mean weakness. They mean I survived. I don't hate her. Hate would mean she still has power over me. I don't forgive her either. Forgiveness isn't required for freedom. I chose something better. I chose myself. That night, I cut the cake and ate it alone, smiling softly, not because my life was perfect, but because it was finally mine. And if you're listening to this story, if you've ever been betrayed by the person who was supposed to love you the most, hear me clearly. Being abandoned didn't end me. It rebirthed me. She thought she erased me on my birthday. But that was the night I began living.